And yet I'm going to argue that we're going to have to now reinvent management. The way we lead, we plan, we organize, we hire, we motivate. All of those things we're going to have to reinvent, because today organizations are facing a set of challenges that are truly unprecedented. So I think the first challenge that we face today, which is truly unprecedented, we are literally the first generation in history that is having to cope with an inflection point in the pace of change. Literally, change has changed, and it's changed in our lifetimes. We live in a world today that seems like it's all punctuation and very little equilibrium. Change is seditious, it's unrelenting, it's ever surprising. But think about this for a moment. Think about kind of an exponential curve. Imagine just an exponential curve. And think about the things in our world right now that are changing at an exponential pace. Just think about that for a moment. What things are changing at an exponential pace? CO2 emissions, they're going up at an exponential pace. The number of internet connections in the world, on that same curve. The amount of data storage out there, same curve. Number of mobile devices connected to the web, also going up on that kind of a curve. The number of genes that we've sequenced, also on that kind of a curve. And I can tell you, if you go back 100 years ago, there was nothing that was changing at an exponential pace. This is entirely new. But we face other challenges. The second kind of fundamental new reality for most companies around the world today is hyper-competition. Right? If you go back a few years, there were all kinds of barriers that protected the incumbents from the winds of creative destruction. And those barriers, they used to protect a company's margins. They fattened up, they allowed you to keep your prices high. They fatten the margins. As those barriers come down, every company is in a bare-knuckle fight to defend its margins, defend its position in the marketplace, and the only way of doing that is through innovation. So as accelerating change requires companies to be more adaptable, the winds of creative destruction are forcing companies to be more creative, more inventive. You have to earn your place in the market every single day. Third challenge I think organizations face today, and perhaps maybe the most pressing one. We also live in a world where knowledge itself is becoming a commodity, where it's getting harder and harder for any organization to really differentiate itself, to bring something kind of truly new and unique to the marketplace. Today, knowledge advantages dissipate very, very quickly because your good people go work for your competitor, because you have an army of consultants around the world benchmarking all these companies and transferring knowledge from the fast to the slow and the smart to the not so smart, because all these companies are using the same network of business partners and vendors. That's another conduit for moving all of this knowledge around. So in that world, it's much less about, what kind of knowledge advantage do I have right now, then how fast am I creating new knowledge? With the emphasis on the word create. So we've talked about three kind of profound challenges that organizations are facing. How do you build a company that can change as fast as change itself? How do you build a company where innovation is the work of everybody all the time, every day? And how do you create an organization where people are willing to bring you the gifts of their initiative, their creativity, and their passion? I believe the companies that thrive over the next decade and beyond are going to be the companies that make progress on this. The companies that evolve their management models faster than their competitors in ways that make them more adaptable, more innovative, and more engaging places to work. Now the question is, what do you do to accelerate that process? So whatever difference you want to make, aim high and start working. But don't be content to simply imitate somebody else's best practice, because I just don't think it's good enough anymore. So that's number one. Innovation always starts with that kind of aspiration. It's true when you want to innovate around management, like everything else. Number two, to be a management innovator, like any other sort of innovator, you have to be willing to challenge management dogma, right? You have to challenge the embedded, unexamined, wallpaper beliefs that simply, surround us and limit our degrees of freedom. Because you think about it, go back to the kind of fundamental question. What problem was management invented to solve? 100 years ago, what problem were those people trying to solve? I can tell you, it wasn't a problem of being adaptable and innovative and an inspiring place to work. The problem they were trying to solve is, how do you turn human beings into semi-programmable robots? How do we take the farm hands and the housemaids and the craftspeople, get them to show up on time, to tend to that machine, to do the same thing over and over again? That's what we, and by golly, we succeeded. So that's kind of, all this DNA in our organization, that's the goal it was supposed to serve. So now we have to go back and challenge some of those fundamental beliefs. So number one, you have to have aspiration. Number two, you have to be a contrarian. Number three, you have to be willing to learn from the fringe. Innovation in management, again, like every other sort of innovation, it starts out on the fringe. It doesn't start with the mainstream. If you're looking for, big Fortune 500 companies to really drive this, it's probably not going to happen there. Might happen 3 or 4 levels down, but it's not going to be coming from the top of those big organizations. Right? Whether it's art, music, literature, fashion, the future happens on the fringe. If you want to really see the future of management, you have to look in some really unusual places. And I would tell you one of the best places to look right now is on the web. I mean, kind of management, that's pretty much a feudalistic system. If you think about the web, not so much. Right? The web is kind of the global operating system for innovation. So I have a feeling that the kind of values that today characterize the web, we're going to have to bake those into our organizations. The values of openness, meritocracy, flexibility, collaboration, all those deep values, forget the technology, those have to also become the values of our organizations. Why? Because the web already is adaptable, already is innovative, already is amazingly engaging. It has all of the characteristics our organizations lack. So if you want to be a management innovator, the question you want to start asking is, how do you take not just the tools, because sometimes they're kind of superficial, but how do you think about these deep principles on the web, and how do we bake them into our organizations? Because I think for the first time since the Industrial Revolution, you cannot build a company that's fit for the future without building one that's fit for human beings. And we should be grateful we've been given this chance. Because those management pioneers 100 years ago, they were trying to work against the grain of what it means to be human. We're not. The fact is, human beings, we're amazingly adaptable. We are just enormously resilient as human beings. So in many ways, human beings already have the qualities, the essential qualities our organizations lack. Because those organizations have inside them a management model that was built to serve another purpose. It's not one versus the other. We have to do both. But my hope for you is that in some small way, in whatever organization you work, that you become a champion for the future. And that you become a management innovator who's dedicated to creating an organization that will fully utilize and fully honor the gifts of every single person who comes there every day. Thank you so much.